Hello, I'm Skip Alzheimer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show, where we show old 16mm films from the AV Geeks collection. And this is a pre-recorded show. I'm not really here, or I might be. I don't know. The reason we pre-record shows is because we might have lost power due to a storm or a tree, or the whims of the power company. Also, we maybe lost internet for the same reasons. Or I'm not available because I'm lifting a pallet of film somewhere, or who knows. Yeah, I might be traveling. I might have accidentally slept in. So anyways, this is our show. I'll be trying to tune in via the comments and be there physically that way. But let's go ahead and watch some old 16mm films. This is a Cornet film, and it tells us where our letters go.
There's going to be a birthday party. Mother and Carolyn know about it, but it's going to be a surprise for Jerry. He's outside playing. He's the one wearing the coonskin cap. Jerry doesn't know what Mother and Carolyn are doing. Do you? Of course, they're sending out invitations to the party. All they have left to do is put each invitation inside an envelope. Wet the flap of the envelope and seal it so the invitation won't fall out. And what else is needed? A stamp. They have to put a stamp on each envelope. We pay for mail service when we pay for the stamps. Now this invitation is ready to be mailed. It has the name of one of Jerry's friends, the friend's street address, and the town and state where he lives. All this is necessary if mail is to get where we want it to go. Most of the invitations are going to children who live in our town. But this one is going out of town, to Jerry's cousin, Billy Green. He lives on a farm that is on a rural delivery route, near another town a few miles away. The invitation will get to Billy because the right address is on the envelope. Now all the invitations are ready to be mailed, and there's just time. It's 10 minutes to 4. The mail is collected from the corner mailbox at 4 o'clock. So Carolyn hurries to put on her coat. With the invitations hidden inside a paper bag, Jerry won't see them when Carolyn goes by on her way to the mailbox. Soon the invitations will be on their way. Will Jerry see Carolyn carrying the bag and wonder what's in it? No, he's too busy playing. Jerry hasn't guessed the secret. Carolyn will make sure that all the invitations go inside the mailbox. What will happen to them now? Carolyn doesn't know. She just knows they will get to where they're sent. But we can find out. Here comes a mail truck. The driver is a mailman who gathers letters and packages that people have mailed. He stops at mailboxes all over town and takes the mail out of them. Look, there are the invitations. This mailman will take the mail from the mailboxes to the post office. Let's follow along and see what happens. This is our town post office. And here's the mail truck that has the invitations. What will happen to them inside the post office? Let's see. The invitations to Jerry's party are in this bag of mail. The people who work in the post office will help the invitations get to Jerry's friends. See the invitations? They are ready to go through the canceling machine. This machine marks the stamp on every letter to show that the stamp has been used and cannot be used again. Now the invitations have been canceled. Where will they go next? They go here. All the letters are sorted here and put into various boxes according to where they are going. All the mail for our town is put in a box marked local. But the invitation to Jerry's cousin goes in a different box because it will be sent to a different town. Now the mail that will stay in our town must be sorted again. Each of these boxes is for a different mail route in our town. The mail is sorted so that each mailman will get only the mail that goes to people on his mail route. The invitations to the children in our town are being sorted now. Meanwhile, the first clerk is taking care of the mail that goes out of town, tying together all the letters that go to the same town. There's the invitation to Jerry's cousin Billy. It's in the mail sack that will go on a train to the town near the farm where Billy lives. The other sacks of mail will go to different places all over the country. A short time later, at the railroad station, some of the mail for out of town is placed aboard a mail car in a train. The invitation to Jerry's cousin is in the last sack. Soon the train is on its way, carrying the mail. In the mail car, as the train moves along, the mail clerks sort the mail that was put aboard. These mail sacks and these boxes are for different places along the way. There's the invitation to Jerry's cousin, in the box with other mail for the same town. Early the next morning, at the post office in our town, each mailman sorts the mail he will deliver. He arranges it by streets and house number. There's one of the invitations, and another. Soon Jerry's friends will have them. Now the mailman has finished sorting the mail for his route. He's ready to go. Here he comes. This is the way all the invitations to children in our town will be delivered. Isn't it wonderful that we can send mail and have it delivered right to where we sent it, and it costs us only the price of a stamp? A few miles away from our town, the invitation to Jerry's cousin Bill is being delivered. A rural delivery mail carrier has brought it from the town to which the train carried it out to the mailbox on the farm where Bill lives. Soon Bill will have it. His mother will take it to him. Now, here's a town that's nearly 1,000 miles from our town. Something is happening here in the post office. Jerry's Aunt Margaret is sending him a birthday present by airmail and special delivery, so it will get to him quickly. The mail clerk weighs the package to find out how much postage Aunt Margaret will have to pay. Airmail costs more than regular mail, and there's an extra charge for special delivery. The package is addressed correctly, and now with the right amount of stamps on it, it will get to Jerry. And it will go by air mail. Special delivery. Soon an airplane is leaving Aunt Margaret's town, carrying the present for Jerry and other mail that is being sent by air. At last it is Jerry's birthday, and up in his apartment they're having the party. It was a wonderful surprise for Jerry. But he has another surprise coming. For a special delivery mailman is just leaving the post office to make some deliveries. A little while later, they're still having fun at Jerry's surprise birthday party when someone's at the door. Can you guess who it is? It's the special delivery mailman. He's brought Jerry's present from Aunt Margaret that came nearly 1,000 miles by airmail. Now Jerry can see what Aunt Margaret sent. It's a box. But what can be in the box? Stationery. And look, it has Jerry's name and address printed on the paper. Now Jerry will write many letters to his friends and relatives. The mail helped Jerry have a surprise party and helped him get a surprise birthday present. But we all know that the mail helps us all the time. And we can depend on it, too.
Throughout my life, I have been obsessed with different types of office supplies and equipment. When I was a little kid, I really wanted a typewriter. I'm not sure why, I just really liked typewriter. I was reading a lot of Hardy Boy mysteries at the time, and I was like, well, I can set up my own private detective agency and solve mysteries, but I need a typewriter. And then over the years, I've acquired fax machines, photocopiers. I have a variety of staplers. I had a comb binding machine that would allow me to make plastic comb bound documents. This is all before I was collecting films. So there was already this weird obsession with things. I had printing presses, none of which I really got up and running. A pneumatic paper cutter that would cut a phone book in half, a big phone book. Oh yeah, if you don't know what a phone book is, it was a giant paper book filled with phone numbers of people and of businesses. Anyways, they were very thick, and I could cut one in half with the paper cutter, which I have since sold off to somebody. Anyhow, let's what do I want to do next? There's so many films to choose from. Let's learn about surface blasting in metal and non-metal mines. This film is made specifically for people that work in the mining industry, and this is for people setting explosives in above-ground mining operations. So enjoy. It's weird, it doesn't seem to have any audio. That's very strange. Well, let's watch this film about the meaning of adolescence instead.
The word adolescent comes from the Latin adolescere, to grow to maturity. The years between childhood and manhood or womanhood are years of growth, socially, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Physical maturing is called puberty. The Latin pubertas means age of manhood, because in ancient days, the physically mature youth was considered a man. Even today, in the more primitive cultures of the world, as in this Tuareg tribe of North Africa, customs developed through centuries of experience prepare the child for manhood. His parents know what is expected of their son, and so even in childhood, he sits silent at the tribal council, eagerly awaiting the day of his initiation into Tuareg manhood. When the boy reaches puberty, at the age of 14, his father confers upon him first a veil and then a sword, symbols of nobility and maturity. There is a new master in the desert. Ready to take his place in the Ahal, the center of Tuareg social life, he pays tribute to the lady of his choice, seeking her favors with songs and verses. And thus to win his reward, her hand in marriage. Now, entrusted to each other, they will remain one carefree year in her father's camp, a time to be remembered. Then one day his friends sweep down to take them back to his father's camp, where the young couple, still no older than 16, will make a new home in the desert. Contrast the achievement of manhood in our 20th century culture. The word puberty now has only a physical meaning. Responsibilities and privilege are withheld in spite of physical maturity. Here are Alec and Joan, typical teenagers of today. For them, adolescence will extend over 6 or 7 years, in between years, when they have no definite place in society. Alec is not a child, and yet he is not an adult. The years of adolescence can be unhappy years, frustrating years sometimes, a time of striving for things that seem impossible to achieve, a time of insecurity and worry over the future, of making decisions for keeps. What kind of job does he really want? There may seem to be very little real progress toward the goal of maturity and independence. If the teenage is considered a problem age, it is mainly because youth is judged by adult standards, ignoring the difficulty of this long period of adolescence and the real preparation for manhood. Because Alec's mother knows that her child has many years in which to grow up, she neglects his training for manhood. Like too many mothers of today, she fails to make him responsible for even the smallest matters. Because the modern American home is comparatively easy to manage, the family has ceased to be a working unit. Alec's mother runs the whole house alone. Before the mechanical age transformed the home, the daughter of the house could make a real contribution to family living. And the sons, too, had vital responsibilities, like carrying wood and water. Nowadays, father has his interests. Mother has different ones. And son doesn't share in either.
See you later.
Where are you going, dear?
Auto show.
I can't see what interest they have in looking at a lot of cars all exactly the same. Especially when they can't buy one anyway.
Because Alec looks more like a man than a child, his mother expects him to make all kinds of difficult adjustments without the help that she lavished on him as a child.
For heaven's sake, go to bed and stop mooning over those cars. What if the Browns are getting a convertible? We can't afford one, and that's all there is to it.
Let's take a look at some of the adjustments that Alec and Joan have to make. First of all, there is the physical adjustment. Here is Joan with an almost new body and new feelings. She may like what she sees, but it takes time to get used to it. Now, for the first time, she must face the fact that this is what she will look like for the rest of her life. This is her face from now on. Her childhood dreams of herself as a glamorous princess may have to be revised. For Alec, there are other physical problems, like his bad skin. Then there's his clumsiness. It's just the normal lack of muscular coordination that goes with his rapid growth. These physical adjustments have a truly overwhelming effect on Alec's feelings just when he's striving so hard to be grown up. Then there's social adjustment. Getting along with other people begins in babyhood. At first, you're only interested in yourself and how Mother feels about you. Then a few more people come into the picture. Children make friends easily, quarrel often, and make it up just as quickly. In adolescence, the group of friends is wider, and the young people are expected to be less emotional and better adjusted to one another. Alec is unconsciously making this adjustment. He's not quite sure of his relationship with his friends, and in his uncertainty, he wants to do exactly as the rest of the crowd does. In dress and behavior, he is completely conventional, not by the standards of his parents, but by the standards of his pals. His friends are now the most important influence in his life. He wants to go where they go, eat what they eat, read what they read. Alec's father fails to see the importance of this association.
Do you want me?
Yeah, sit down. Alec, this hanging around the corner store till all hours has got to stop. It isn't doing you any good, and your schoolwork's suffering. If you don't get down to business at school, you'll never amount to anything.
So what?
In his effort to assert his independence, Alec resists the authority which his father is unwilling to relinquish. In this seemingly useless hanging around, he is finding his own way of solving the important problems of social adjustment. Sex adjustment. Perhaps the most important and difficult part of the adjustment to people is learning to get along with members of the opposite sex. They have a terrific new urge to get along with each other, but they don't yet know how. What kind of boys do girls really like? What kind of girls do boys like? How will the others react to what they do? There is a deep need for experience in association with members of the opposite sex. Only by informal social contact can they learn to get along together. Reading about sex and talks with understanding parents may help, but without getting to know the other sex under normal, healthy conditions, It's almost impossible to make this most difficult of all adjustments. Religious adjustment. The child accepts the religious beliefs of her parents as she accepts their other habits and rules, without question. A sound basis was laid during childhood for Joan's religious experience during adolescence. But with increased knowledge and intelligence comes a questioning, a desire to understand for herself. The teenager reevaluates her whole world. She feels religious doubts that she must work out for herself. It may be, as it is for Joan, a gradual process of putting childhood beliefs into a more mature form. For some girls, it may be a sudden religious awakening, accompanied by emotional instability and feelings of guilt and fear. Talk with others in the same stage of questioning will help to relieve the tension and work out the problem. Discussions with an understanding clergyman or teacher will help to clarify confused ideas. Joan's parents have a tolerant attitude toward her criticism of their beliefs, and by their willingness to discuss her beliefs, they are helping her to find a faith that will be satisfactory for life. Moral adjustment. Again, the child, as he grows, is faced with the problem of right and wrong. No longer can Alec rely on his parents' authority as the be-all and end-all of morality. He has to decide for himself, and he is likely at this age to accept the opinion of his friends rather than that of adults. He sees nothing wrong with any behavior as long as it conforms to the standards of his classmates. With the solving of such small moral issues comes conscious or unconscious self-evaluation. Because Alec fell below his own moral standards, he has an undefined feeling of inadequacy about himself and is resentful against the rest of the world. If this happened too often, his disturbance might cause still more undesirable behavior, such as truancy or even destruction of property. It might be the cause of withdrawal and daydreaming. But with good home training, based on affection and reasonable discipline, and with intelligent teaching at school and at church, and high standards among his own group, he can set up a moral code that will be reflected in sound personal adjustment and a healthy social attitude. Thus, we see that the teenager of today has to make 5 major adjustments. Adjustment to physical changes, social adjustment, or getting along with other people, getting along with members of the opposite sex, the settlement of religious doubts, and the setting up of a moral code that he feels is acceptable to himself and to the rest of the world. It's the stress of making these 5 adjustments that causes much of the extreme behavior of our teenagers. If we recognize that this is only a stage of preparation for adult living, we will better understand our adolescents. There they go, restless, moody, worried, hilarious, yet striving toward maturity. Are we helping them to achieve this maturity?
That was Lauren Green. Ben Cartwright from Bonanza. Adama, Commander Adama from the 1970s Battlestar Galactica. He also did, I think, Gravy Train, dog food commercials. And he's Canadian, and so Crawley Films was a Canadian film company, and so they made some educational films that got distributed by McGraw-Hill and also got distributed by Young American Films. So Lorne shows up as a narrator. He doesn't show up as a person in there, which is too bad, but yeah. And I'm still trying to figure out why Surface Blasting and Metal and Non-Metals doesn't have a soundtrack. It's baffling to me. But this is kind of an interesting oddity, which it's long, but it's awesome. It's basically a TV public access. No, let me start that again. Public television production about drugs, and this was probably made in the mid to late 60s, and it has an interview with our good friend Timothy Leary. So this is From Pot to Psychedelics.
The following program is from NET, the National Educational Television Network.
The National Educational Television Network presents Regional Report, a program of fact and comment by NET reporters throughout the country. Today's subject, From Pot to Psychedelics. Now, here is the national editor of Regional Report, Paul Niven.
Good evening. The pot and psychedelic cult, whatever else it may be, is new and different. Unlike the nihilist beatniks of a few years back, today's LSD cultists say that they are turned on, not turned off. And if they talk of dropping out, they do so because they reject square society and claim they can build a better one. The psychedelic people are not in the historic pattern of dope addiction. Their drugs are so-called head drugs, ranging from such natural substances as marijuana and hashish to LSD and other artificial concoctions. These head drugs are not physically addictive, as are such body drugs as opium, heroin, and alcohol. An LSD enthusiast will inveigh against liquor as fervently as a 19th century temperance crusader. But some doctors and scientists claim that pot and LSD not only can lead to addictive drugs, but can be dangerous in themselves. In the next hour, we'll hear many sides of the controversy from 8 American cities. First, the city which has been identified with so many new movements and is now the preeminent home of the hippies, San Francisco.
Free! I'm free! We're not free! You dirty We're not free! I ain't got a dirty heart, I'm a clean bean! Bless your dirty heart! You talk about freedom with no responsibility! You talk about love with no obligation! You get fined! You turn on when you get fined! You get Jesus Christ and you turn on! You have turned society off and the world off! You need Christ and turn on! Thank God I've been turned off! I'm turned on and tuned in! Hallelujah!
In California, marijuana arrests among juveniles were up 140% last year. 25,000 adults were arrested for taking illegal drugs. Despite stricter enforcement, more rigid laws, and more rigid attitudes on the part of the courts, the use of drugs in California is increasing, both on and off the campus. In the past 7 years, marijuana arrests have increased by 248%. Dangerous drug arrests, including LSD, are up 84%. Why? More people are using drugs: LSD, marijuana, tobacco, and alcohol. Tobacco causes cancer. Alcohol taken to excess damages the brain and kidneys. They are legal, marijuana and LSD are not. I am Mel Wax, KQED in San Francisco. Here in San Francisco and in nearby Berkeley, in fraternity and sorority houses, marijuana is used, both by conforming students and by student rebels. It is used by hippies in the Haight-Ashbury district. It is smoked in cigarettes, pipes, Turkish hookahs. It is sprinkled on salads, used as seasoning in soup, and mixed in chocolate chip cookies, even in the imposing Victorian homes of Pacific Heights.
Well, there's a physiological effect and there's a psychological effect. It seems to speed up their blood count. The pupil of the eye becomes dilated. The white of the eye becomes bloodshot. The person then becomes intoxicated. Their moods or their feelings are exaggerated. People that use marijuana have a tendency to be gregarious, and they do it in the company of each other.
Matthew O'Connor is a former undercover narcotics agent who is now in charge of the San Francisco office of the California State Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement.
The exaggerated mood of the gay atmosphere of the party seems to exist. If they have had any feeling at all toward nonconformity, it will manifest itself under the influence of the drug. So that if the group or if the individual feels a tendency to be promiscuous in sex, any reservations that they had about it are dropped while under the influence of the drug. This is particularly true in the case of marijuana. This is a kilo brick of marijuana. It's 2 2/10 pounds, and we were paying $225 in 1965 per kilo. This is a portion of a kilo now. We're paying $80 a kilo in 1967.
I can't see anything wrong with it at all. I know it's not physically harmful, and I never put the drug down. The drug, I couldn't call it a drug. It's just a weed because people call it a weed. It's put here on God's planet. It's put here for everybody.
There is a large supply, and it's the old situation of supply and demand. These are marijuana cigarettes. They're frequently referred to as joints, reefers, sticks.
Are you stealing my red fire?
They smoke it in a pipe, then they also drink it as a tea. They wash the seeds and the stems and some of the marijuana material in wine, and then consume the wine with the view that the alcohol has...
Gin? No, it's not in gin.
Washed the cannabinol, the cannabis resin, from the leaves and simply drink the wine for the same effect.
Mixing your media.
Marijuana is not a narcotic. Its basic effects are roughly comparable to the effects of average doses of alcohol. The reasons why so many people, young people, are turning to these drugs are in part the same reasons why so many people of the older generation turn to drugs: to escape, to find relaxation, with alcohol, nicotine, sedatives, stimulants, tranquilizers, to relieve boredom and monotony, to socialize with other people.
Dr. Joel Ford has been director of the Center for Special Problems of the San Francisco Department of Public Health.
A reaction to the hypocrisy that they find in the older generation and in the American value structure, a feeling of alienation or disaffiliation from the broader society, and curiosity about the effects of drugs, often magical expectations that they will do something wonderful for them. We need to look at the roots of these problems, trying to understand why so many people in our society cannot exist without using drugs or feel that they can't.
The spread of marijuana has now convinced me that on first convictions they should serve some time in the county jail and then be placed on probation.
Francis McCarty is a Superior Court judge in San Francisco County.
From the ones I have seen, they are not from broken homes or deprived families or
poverty families. They're from good families, from stable families. The last group, one of them was the son of a university professor. They're seeking something that they cannot find. What it is, I don't know. Basically, it is a medical problem as to the users. I'm not talking about sellers, rather than a penal one. And I think these people are sick, and I think these people should be treated compassionately and at the same time made to realize that these offenses, that is marijuana and hard narcotics, are felonies.
Forget those three. Having too good a time.
My criticism is that the penalties after the first offense are horrendous and far too severe. The penalties are greater for a second and third use of matters of this kind than rape and murder and other felonies. Let me give you an example. It's possible, given 2 misdemeanor convictions of possession of a marijuana cigarette in the past when it was a misdemeanor, for a person for the possession of 1 codeine pill without a prescription to serve 15 years in the state prison. The adult authority cannot parole him, and the court cannot grant probation. Now, when you figure the average second-degree murderer serves 5 years and 9 months, it doesn't seem to be a proper thing.
As far as our laws are concerned, I would think that we should do away with all penalties regarding marijuana.
Jerome H. Skolnick is a sociologist of law who teaches at the University of California and does research at the Center for the Study of Law and Society. He is the author of Justice Without Trial.
I think that one of the most serious problems in our criminal law is the attempt to control things that people do on a voluntary basis as a general matter, and this is especially true with respect to marijuana. It was much of a failure as the attempt to control prohibition through, to control the use of beverage alcohol through prohibition was. As far as our medical policy is concerned, I would say that the medical people in general, well, they vary, but let's take the best of them. They have tried to be objective. And their objectivity has, curiously enough, I think, led to a kind of falsification of the nature of marijuana use. They might describe the effects of marijuana use, for example, in such terms as adrenal activity or pulse rate or heart rate. Well, look at it this way. Suppose you had somebody who had never played a game of tennis, and he was asked what the effects of playing tennis were. Well, one way you could describe them is to say that after you play tennis, there's marked adrenal activity, there's heightened pulse rate, there's facial flushing, there's sweating. Sometimes it's followed by dizziness and nausea, and sometimes even people die. That is to say, you could paint a horrible clinical portrait of a tennis game, which would not be false, you see, in the specific terms in which it's written, but it would be terribly misleading. And I think that much the same thing has been done with respect to the use of marijuana, for example.
This is liquid LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. It has rather a blue cast to it. This is placed in either sugar cubes or tablets or capsules. These were seized here locally in the Bay Area. Here is a piece of candy. We assume that the LSD was put in liquid solution and drops were placed on a portion of the candy so that an individual would have pieces of candy in his pocket or sugar tablets. And the LSD would only be on one side and not discernible to the cursory examination by anybody, including a police officer.
There's a big difference between being inside and outside. Outside trips are sort of sufficient unto themselves. But when you're outside, I mean, you're sort of isolated on one hand, and you're part of something else which is altogether different. You're part of all the whole thing that's around you, particularly if you're someplace like up in the hills. And there was a heightened sense of color, sense of design, particularly design, picking up patterns in everything, picking up patterns in nature. Just the vaguest sense of being part of something that's a whole lot larger than one person or a whole body of people.
It's beautiful. And I've taken them, and I've had nothing but beautiful things happen to me ever since. And I'm much happier now, and much freer, and I love everybody.
Oh, it's been a beautiful experience the past year since I first tried LSD. It's opened my mind to accepting the different people that turn on to the different drugs, and I haven't seen any harm in any of them. I've given each one of them, a little bit of my time, and it's so easy to just love everybody.
None of these mind-altering drugs has a uniform, consistent effect on people, whether you're talking about alcohol or LSD or marijuana. Therefore, the drug itself would not make people more loving or friendly, or, for that matter, more aggressive or antisocial. What happens is the drug interacts with the personality or character structure of the person taking the drug and the social setting or context in which it's taken. And it's this combination of things that we loosely call the drug effect. So depending on the already existing attitudes and values of the person taking the drug, it could have many different effects. Some people would become, let's say, more loving. Others would become less loving. Some would have a possibly beneficial experience. Others would have a possibly harmful experience.
I would assume that LSD, like many other biotics or chemicals, will have many very fine and efficacious uses for the benefit of mankind. I would say that that's probably a certainty. But it is as dangerous, more so, than dynamite or a nuclear bomb. And it shouldn't be used except under the closest supervision of the most competent authorities. Research is what is needed here.
Clearly, here, as elsewhere, there is disagreement both on the dangers and possible benefits of marijuana, LSD, and other drugs. There is disagreement about how to cope with them, whether they are legal, medical, or social problems, or even whether they are problems. All agree that the use of drugs is increasing in all segments of society, but particularly among the young and among the students. Much more must be known about the effects of these drugs on the body and on the mind.
It has become virtually impossible in recent months to pick up a paper in New York and not find a story about kids using drugs. There are two reasons for this. Nothing makes a better headline than a story about a pot raid on campus. And secondly, there is the simple, undeniable fact that more young people are experimenting with drugs than ever before. This is Terrence Smith reporting for WNDT. I'm standing on St. Mark's Place in Greenwich Village. And so far as the drug scene is concerned, this is where the action is. Obviously, a devoted pothead can get his marijuana, or his LSD if that's his hang-up, almost anywhere in the metropolitan area. But nowhere is it easier than in this immediate neighborhood. This is where much of the traffic in soft drugs, and by that I mean marijuana, hashish, pep pills, or the hallucinogens, originates. It spreads out from here throughout the greater New York area, and since its audience is predominantly young, it frequently finds its way to college campuses. As a result, the use of soft drugs has become a major cause of alarm among college officials. The police at two universities, Cornell and Fairleigh Dickinson, went so far as to plant spies among the students to rat on their switched-on classmates. In the minds of many, this was going too far. But few people question the fact that the use of soft drugs including the potent LSD, has reached unprecedented proportions. A number of doctors in New York are looking into the physiological effects of LSD. Among them is Kurt Hirschhorn, a geneticist at Mount Sinai School of Medicine.
The research derived from some findings by Dr. Maimon Cohen from the Department of Pediatrics at the State University of Buffalo, who was a geneticist there, who decided to add some LSD to cultures of human peripheral blood white cells, lymphocytes, which one can make divide in culture. When he added LSD in doses that are equivalent to those that float around in the blood after one takes the usual dose of LSD, he found that there was a high percentage of chromosome breaks and rearrangements.
And what have you discovered so far?
We know that other agents which cause similar breaks and rearrangements, such as X-rays, certain types of viruses, and certain types of chemicals, all of which are associated either in man or in experimental animals with the production of leukemia and other tumors, that these agents are capable of producing such breaks and rearrangements. We therefore have to follow these patients for some years to see whether the production of breaks and rearrangements in them will also cause an increase of leukemia and other tumors. This is one of the potential dangers of such damage. Another problem is that we do not know whether these same breaks and rearrangements occur in the cells of these patients which produce the sperm and the egg from which their future offspring will be formed. If such damage occurs in these cells as well, then there's a possibility, number one, of great damage to the child, great enough in some cases to produce an early abortion, perhaps less great in other instances, in which case the child may be born with congenital malformations, including mental retardation, and in even some cases where the rearrangements of the chromosomes are balanced in such a way that the child that is born looks apparently normal, but itself has a potential danger of producing abnormal children.
This is Terrence Smith reporting for WNDT in New York.
Drug cult. The movement has much in common with religion, and it has in Dr. Timothy Leary, a colorful and articulate evangelist. He was interviewed in Houston by Carl Brazel of station KUHT.
Dr. Leary, how do you evaluate your influence on the increase in the use of hallucinogenic drugs by college students?
Well, I want to make it clear that I didn't invent LSD. God made LSD, the evolutionary process. LSD has been used in its plant form for thousands of years. Nor have I been a pusher or a advocate of LSD. I have been in the position of a prophet who's been pointing out to his fellow man that this was going to happen. 7, 6, 5 years ago, several of us from Harvard went down to Washington. We told the FDA, hey, listen, there's going to be an LSD boom. It can't be stopped. It's going to be used. It's going to take over. You better be ready for it. Then I'm in the unfortunate position of Cassandra, who, when the hurricane occurs, is blamed for it. Far from telling people they should take LSD, my message to young people is, since you're going to take it anyway, be careful when you take it. Take it for the right reasons. Take it in a sense of seriousness, and take it well prepared. And don't take it unless you know what you're getting into.
Do your feelings along these lines include other drugs as well as LSD? Marijuana, heroin, mescaline?
Well, there are two types of drugs. There are the down drugs, the narcotic drugs that put you in a stupor, of which heroin, the opiate derivatives, and alcohol are the prime offenders, and of course the tranquilizers and barbiturates also take you down. Then there is a large
armamentarium of up drugs, of up experiences, of which marijuana is the mildest, going through mescaline, peyote, LSD. But I must point out that LSD is already somewhat old hat. There are now currently available in certain American cities and in certain chemical laboratories drugs more powerful, which last longer than LSD. This is just the beginning of a scientific and psychological breakthrough, which can't be stopped by law.
Don't you feel that it's wrong to encourage the use of these illegal drugs by college students? This is, in effect, isn't it encouraging the breaking of a law?
Well, I never tell anyone what to do with their body, because what we're talking about here is the first and last frontier of freedom, my body. Now, who touches my body, or what touches my body, or what goes into my body, that's the last and first frontier of my divinity. And I have to say to Caesar, as every religious spokesman has done for the last few thousand years, Caesar, I render unto you what belongs to you out there, in the highways and the byways and the weapons and the banks. But I reserve my right to do within my own body what feels right to me. There can be no laws about what goes on inside a person's body. And I'm engaged in several court cases right now testing the constitutionality of these laws which tell you what you can put in your body. The marijuana laws are clearly against the Constitution, against the ancient traditions of mankind. The laws against LSD will not stand up. What you can do, you can put labels on the package, and we're all in favor of the FDA and the federal government putting labels on the package. If I want to kill myself quickly with cyanide or slowly with cigarettes, fine. Let the government tell me that. Let the government put on the marijuana package the scientific evidence about marijuana. Let the government put on the booze bottle what booze does for you if they want to be concerned with public health. But they cannot pass laws and maintain laws which govern what people are going to do, particularly something pleasant and something revelatory and something educational like LSD. Why are 10 million Americans smoking marijuana today? I mean, these are not criminals, they're not dope fiends. Matter of fact, they come from your best colleges, and they're your most effective people. The latest statistic is that 70% of the freshman class at Harvard smoke marijuana. Now, that's my old alma mater, and I don't want to boast, but that's a sign of the times. You just can't stop intelligent, thoughtful people from doing something that feels good and right to them.
One final question, Dr. Leary. How would you explain, or how do you explain, the rather unconventional attire that you have on at this time?
Unconventional? My dear Carl, this is the most orthodox attire that a man can wear. What you're wearing, a tie and that funny suit, is that's a fad. That's only been around for 20 or 30 years. I'm wearing the ancient garb of my profession, which is prophet, which is part-time would-be holy man. I'm the orthodox person. You know, as Alan Watts says, there's nothing as far out as a square. Just look at the way he acts and dresses.
In Washington, we talk with some of the people who administer and enforce the laws which Dr. Leary dislikes. These government officials say they are worried about the drug vogue.
This is John Davenport of station WETA, Washington, D.C. In true bureaucratic fashion, the problem of drug abuse, as seen from here, is handled by two agencies, the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Narcotics Bureau. The Narcotics Bureau enforces laws against possession of marijuana and the so-called hard drugs, such as heroin. The Food and Drug Administration concerns itself with LSD and the so-called dangerous drugs, such as pep pills and goofballs. Food and Drug implies that it has a more enlightened approach, concentrating on public education about drug abuse and enforcing the laws against the illegal supplier and manufacturer. FDA claims it's not out to make a criminal of the user. Its administrator is Dr. James Goddard, the first medical doctor to head that organization.
Our job is to really do three things. First of all, we want to provide good information, an educational program. Secondly, we need to carry out research. Why do people wish to withdraw? Understanding that might give us a better basis upon which to build a good educational activity. And third is the enforcement. And there, as I said, we are interested in seeking out the illegal sources of supply and bringing them to justice rather than the individual users.
Patrick O'Carroll veteran Federal Narcotics agent, says the stories on how the Federal Narcotics Bureau operates are sometimes untrue.
Well, I think this is the most important aspect of any discussion on marijuana. There does seem to be a great amount of misinformation or inaccurate statements in regard to marijuana. And we in the Bureau of Narcotics, or we in the enforcement community, have been accused of telling horror stories about marijuana that are not true. Now, I think it's important to point out, because this is where the misinformation and where the inaccuracies begin, that there is nothing inherent in a marijuana cigarette that will cause a person to begin using heroin and injecting himself with a needle. It isn't the marijuana as such that causes this transition. At least this has never been documented. What does cause it is this involvement in the drug culture or the subculture of a person, and he begins with marijuana, which is quite easy to take and to smoke. It's something that he's done before. And once he becomes involved with this drug culture, his whole life changes.
Our overall impression from this survey is one not so much of blacks and whites as of various shades of gray. It may be anomalous that marijuana, which is illegal, is less harmful than alcohol or tobacco, which are not illegal. The recent report of the President's Crime Commission is surprisingly open-minded on the subject. Even Dr. Leary would agree that LSD presents more serious problems. The pot smoker is a pleasure seeker, but the LSD user professes higher motives, ranging from the liberation of the individual to the salvation of the world. At the same time, a bad trip can be disastrous. Several recent studies now have tentatively linked LSD with genetic damage and leukemia. The whole subject is so new that research has scarcely begun. The psychedelic people claim that theirs is the real world, that the straight or square world is unreal. Be that as it may, and for better or for worse, the evidence is overwhelming that in terms of the number of people involved, especially young people, the psychedelic world is growing and growing rapidly. Good evening.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.
That was made during that time of the spooky logos, the spooky television logos, that and the Screen Gems one from the mid to late 60s. That's just scary. Blah. Anyways, WNET, this was part of something they did, and they had a kind of a nationwide thing where a lot of educational film companies were creating content for it. So there's a lot of NET things in my collection, and I think Indiana University has a big collection of NET stuff. Fascinating because some of the things they're talking about in these films are now legal in certain parts of the United States, and those arguments as far as the dangers of them, some of them are bogus, some of them were unfounded, and some of them are very true. I mean, people who use these external things to make themselves feel better, there's a problem with that, obviously, that you are not really solving the problem, you're just kind of covering it over. And the other thing is the pharmaceutical industry stepped up and created a lot of drugs that were readily abused and caused lots and lots and lots of problems since then. Speaking of drugs that help someone out, you can buy some delicious caffeine. That is the AV Geeks drug of choice. Allows us to do boring spreadsheet work, stack films, splice things, etc. You can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we've done in the past. We've digitized other shows. Also, tell the world you like AV Geeks by sharing what we do, sharing the links, telling friends, family, coworkers, enemies, random people on the street. You can also hit the little like button, or you can subscribe, or ring. There's a notification bell, I think, on YouTube that you can ring and find out about the next time we're doing something. And also, of course, your comments are always appreciated. I am not physically live doing this, but I'm going to be striving to try to read the comments and try to be there at least virtually, as this is a pre-recorded thing. So, join us again the next weekday. Is it tomorrow? Is it over the weekend? On the other side of the weekend, on Monday? Join us, 1 o'clock. And we will be showing you some more films from our collection. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you so much, your eyeballs and your attention. Everybody take care. Have a good rest of your day.